everybody, my name is Maggie Hughes and this is my second video in my interactive notebook series, and today I'm going to talk about how I have my students set up their interactive notebook. You can also do this with the interactive binder that I talked about last time, which is just a variation on the notebook. So the first thing that kind of has to be covered is setting up the notebook takes a while. It's one of those things that has to be done. It has to be done first before you can even really start using it, and it takes about a whole class period. One of the problems that I have with this setup process is it's really hard to demonstrate what you want the kids to do in a whole class setting. Sorry, my eyeliner like run down my face. And it's because you're trying to show something, you're trying to tell them to fold this a certain way, to cut this a certain way, all these kind of things. People are not listening because they're with a group of people or their friends are nearby. They're missing instructions, they're doing it wrong. I was like, I'm not doing this year. I'm not going through it. I even have a document camera that I would use to lay it out and like show them. It still was not working the way I wanted it to. So this is how I decided that I would do notebook setup from now on. And I have to admit, it is wonderful. It has worked so good this year. And here is my solution. Stations. So let me show you. What I did was I sat down and I said, okay, what are the things that I want my students to have in my notebook? How do I want it to look? All that kind of stuff. And I set up my notebooks first, right? Because you need like an example one. You want to see how it looks, how it works. Do I want this here? Do I want it there? All that. So I set these up first. Then after I've set those up, I said, okay, now I'm going to pretend like I'm guiding my students through the setup, except instead of deciding this is what I'm going to say, I actually type it. So what I did was I pretended, and please don't take this the wrong way, but I pretended like I was an idiot and I had never done this before, and I walked someone through it step by step by step. And I mean that in the nicest way possible. So what I mean is you're explaining this to a kid who has never done interactive notebook before. They don't know what you're talking about. They don't have an example in front of you. It needs to be simple, simple, simple. So, for instance, here was one of my first stations. And it is for their table of contents and their first vocab list. So, for instance, at the top you'll see I just put notebook station number 1 and then what they're doing. So I put at the station you will glue in your table of contents and your first vocab list. So that tells them automatically, here's what I'm going to be doing at this station, right? At the bottom I also put, when you finish, you will have the first page of your notebook completed with a table of contents, and your first vocab list will be glued onto page 3. So by the end, I'm also giving them the exact instructions and way that I want them to be done with this station. In between are all the steps. It tells them how many things I want them to pick up. It tells them where I want them to glue it. All that stuff, right? But you're just breaking it down super, super simple. So that was like station 1. My station 2, I had them labeling their notebook. So they took a Sharpie. I told them what I wanted them to write on the top. I had them put the duct tape on the corner that I had them do, and then to also write their name on the spine and stuff like that. So that was station 2. Station 3, I have them number their pages, and it says that they have to at least go to 50, but if they want to and they still have time, they can go past that. Some people number slow, some people number fast. It just depends. I also told them they can use pretty colors if they wanted to. So that was 3. Now we're at 4. At 4, I have them glue in their organization and rules sheet, which looks like this. And it was just a list of things I want them to keep in mind for the notebook, like how I can grade it formally, informally, how it only needs to be used for this class, to not rip any pages out, just stuff like that. It also says they need to discuss it and read it with their group, so you're going over it that way instead of reading it and taking time to do it in front of the class. And then I have them glue in a cheat sheet for their literary devices, which is something I just typed up to kind of help them. Then we have Station 5. Station 5 is where they glue in their PDSA graphing pages. So every time they take a quiz or something, they graph like the grade that they made, and eventually they'll have like a bar graph of their grades. Just good when you want to have a conversation with them about how they're doing in class. And then the last station was they set up their Friday favorites list, which is something we do on Friday to make a 100 things I love list. And so they numbered 1 to 100 and then did 1 through 5. So that was for my academic classes and my inclusion classes. They use this one because they are using this notebook. So I ended up having 6 stations total, and you'll see I just typed these up and I just stuck them in a page protector. I didn't have a laminator. I have a laminator now, the little personal one. I just went ahead and got it. And I put them in the page protectors, which means year after year, if I want to switch them out, I can. If I want to laminate them, I can. This keeps them nice and looking good, hopefully, for a while. So this was, like I said, for my academic and my inclusion class. My honors class that does the binder setup, I took the exact same instructions, except now it says binder, and some things are different and some are the same. So for instance, they do table of contents pages and they label their tabs. That's station 1. Station 2, they're writing their name on it. They're doing something else with their tabs. Station 3, they're doing the organization and rule sheet and the cheat sheet. Station 4, they're doing their PDSA graphing pages. Station 5, they're doing their Friday favorites list. And in Station 6, they're putting in their stems list for the week, which was like this. That's their Greek and Latin root words. And I had them make a set of flashcards for their first set of stems. So, same concept, can be tweaked however you want to. All I did was I set up a timer. Okay, I explained to them what we were doing. I told them the instructions, all the supplies and everything that they needed were placed strategically, at the station, and they were going to have 10 minutes at each station. I will say, for some of the stations, 10 minutes is too long. For some of them, it's not enough. The point is, it pushes them. And if they don't finish, can they continue at another group that takes a little bit less time to do it? Sure. And it worked out great. I will say, though, for my tiny class that only has about 13 to 15 kids in it, I had them just do the stations. When they finished one station, they went to the next one, and that was it. I also actually had a 7th station, which is not on here, which was sitting with me, and I went over how to study for vocab. We went over the words. We talked about what they meant. And then for my honors class, I talked about how to study for stems, how the quiz was going to look. Excuse me. And talked about what the stems meant and all that good stuff. So you can add as many stations, you can take some away, but I just found this works so much better. So here's another way to make things go very smoothly. Now, I will tell you, it takes a lot of time, but it's totally worth it. One thing that bothers me about Interactive Notebook is trash. So you have the kids do a foldable, right? So like, here's one that we did yesterday on theme that I've printed up, and it's 2 pieces of paper that I just chopped in half. It fits on the notebook good at this size. So you've got something like this, right? So you're having them cut it out and glue it in a notebook. The problem is, if you tell them to cut it out, they're going to cut here and they're going to cut all the way around, and so all of this here will be trash. It ends up on the floor. It ends up in my trays. It ends up everywhere but the trash can. So here is my trick. Pre-cut. 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 Everything. Everything that I give to them that goes in the notebook, I pre-cut it. Cutting with a pair of scissors will take you forever. I bought this handy dandy slicer. This is Westcott brand, and it was just from Walmart. It might have been $10. I don't remember how much it costed, but it was not very expensive. This has been a lifesaver. It's so wonderful. Put the page in it, and you can put multiple pages. I think I'll do like 5 at a time. Cut it down the middle, which is how I get this. And then I tell them, you don't need to cut anything. I've already cut it for you. And they won't cut it. Now, you will have some kids that are a little bit OCD and want everything to be cut and trimmed perfectly, and they will cut it some more. Fine. That's maybe 2 kids out of your class of 30. And that's a lot less trash. So that's one thing I recommend. It also means it takes less time to do stations when you're doing the setup. The other thing that I do is I have these little trays. I have them in different colors. You can get them in different sizes. And I go ahead and put supplies that they're going to need for the station in the little container. So for instance, I look at the sheet. So let's look at the first one. The first one is they're going to be gluing stuff into the notebook. So that means that station 1 is going to need glue sticks. So there's 4 desks at each station, or each group in my room. So I'll count out 4 glue sticks, put them in the basket, and then it goes there with that station. That means they have the supplies they need with them. They're not having to carry stuff around. And it also means there's nothing else out that they don't need. I don't put the scissors out for this because I've already cut everything. Problem solved. I put out the glue. If they needed for something else, I put that out. For instance, with my honors class making flashcards, it took a lot of time, but I went ahead and counted out 10 flashcards and put a paper clip on it and stuck them all in here. So all they had to do was grab a stack, and they were already counted out. We didn't spend a ton of time going 1, 2, 3, 4, because kids are going to waste time on stuff. So that's another way that you can save some time with things. And that can be very helpful. You can lay out exactly what supplies they needed. If they were doing coloring, I could lay out the coloring supplies in it had to be a bigger basket, but the bigger basket. I also, for the station where they're labeling their notebook, I laid out the Sharpies in the basket, and just made sure. The station where they're doing the duct tape, I do not trust the children to cut the duct tape into the right size. They're going to get stripped this long. Somebody's going to get a piece this long. They're going to waste a bunch of it. I went ahead and cut that many pieces of the right size of duct tape and placed them all around the edge of this basket. They took one, peeled it off, stuck it on their notebook. Done. Didn't need these scissors, didn't need anything else. Maybe ended up wasting 3 to 5 pieces that would wrinkle or crumble or would stick together or whatever. Didn't have to waste time doing it. Peel it off, stick it. Like I said, took me the time. It's totally worth it. For the honors class, if they needed something hole punched, I went ahead and hole punched it. Once I made the copies, you go ahead and pre-cut, you pre-hole punch, you pre-everything. Okay? So that's my other thing that you can do to make your stations go really fast and to work really well. The other thing that I recommend is if you feel like one of your stations is tricky. So for instance, one of the things that trips my kids up is that I have them write their name on like every edge of their book. And it's hard to kind of tell them what I mean by write your name here. Like I say, write it on the edge, and they're kind of confused. So I will lay my example one there for them to see. They can pick it up and go, oh, right? If you have something, you can lay a sample for them to see. For the honors class, I said, do you need to see my example? And they say, yes. And I can hand it to them, and when they're done, they can bring it back. So it's a good thing to also kind of empower them to know when they need to see an example, when they need to see the sample. So I really like doing that too. This is the best thing I've ever come up with for Interactive Notebook, is to do stations for setting up the notebook or the binder. I super highly recommend it for you in your classes. I think it could work for anybody that uses Interactive Notebook. You could totally do it in a lot smaller stations or bigger stations, more stations, less stations. You could have them do a lot of things. You could have them do just one thing. All of these things help. I highly recommend that you pre-cut, pre-hole punch, anything that you want the kids to do. If you're going to have them put in a foldable and you need them to cut and glue it, I recommend that you go ahead and have a sample or an example laying out for them so they can make sure they're doing it the right way. And the great thing about this was I didn't have to go around and police everybody. They pretty much, with the instructions being typed up like this, knew exactly what they were doing. If they were concerned, they had group members to help them, plus a sample to look at if they were really concerned. And I got to sit back there and do a group session with a small group to talk about vocab, which I never get to do. And it was actually decently quiet in here because they knew that they had to work really fast. And they didn't have a ton of downtime. And everybody's notebook is great. I have only had 2 kids out of my entire classes that their notebook, like number pages or something, is messed up. Everybody so far is all on the same page. We're all set up and everybody's notebook looks exactly the same. It's wonderful. Just another tidbit of information. I did have some kids that were out on the day that we set up the notebook. And I thought for a long time about what I would have them do. And since we have swag time or like lunch tutorials, what do they call it? Oh, smart lunch. Or like a study hall or something like that, you can keep the kids that did not get their notebook set up and you can set it up then. If you want to have them use some class time doing it, you can do it because you've already typed up the directions and you can give them an example. I would have them sit over here at this big empty table over here and they could do it. But again, they're missing something in class. So all I had mine do was I said, okay, we're on page 4 because we put something on pages 1 through 3. So you just start the warm up on page 4 today, and then we will continue with it later on. So that's how I do notebook setup. I hope that you at least get some ideas or things that can help you in your classroom. I really love this idea and it works really great. Stay tuned because in the next interactive notebook series of video, I'm going to be talking about some of my tips and tricks for interactive notebook, some of the common problems. We'll talk about some of the supplies that you might need, and all that good stuff. And I hope that you're having a great day. See you again soon. Bye.